Escape from death row. One man's 24-hour flight through maximum security. The alarm screamed through the dark halls of Ellis Unit, a sound so loud it felt like the concrete itself was shaking. Guards shouted orders, doors slammed, and flashlights cut through the darkness. Somewhere in that chaos, one man, James Earl Ray, a condemned inmate on Texas death row, was already outside the walls that were meant to hold him until the day he died. It was just past 2 a.m. on a humid July night in 1984. The air was thick with the smell of rain and metal. James crawled through a narrow drainage tunnel, his heart pounding so hard he thought the guards might hear it. Behind him, the faint echo of boots striking concrete grew louder. He knew he had only minutes before someone realized he was gone. He pushed forward on his elbows, scraping his arms on rough steel pipes. The tunnel was barely wide enough for his shoulders, and every sound, dripping water, distant thunder, felt magnified in the tight space. He had one thought in his head: don't stop, keep moving. Then, just as he reached the end of the tunnel, a beam of light flashed across the far wall. Someone was coming. James froze. The guard's voice echoed down the tunnel, shouting for backup. For a split second, James thought it was over, that this was where his escape ended and his life would be dragged back to death row. But then, thunder cracked above, masking his movements. He used the noise as cover, kicking the last grate loose with everything he had. The metal screeched, and a rush of night air hit his face. For the first time in years, he smelled freedom. He pulled himself out into the mud and ran, barefoot, bleeding, and half-blind in the storm. Outside the prison, searchlights swung wildly through the trees. The rain came down harder, turning the ground into thick, slippery clay. James slipped once, hitting his knee hard, but got up again. He ran toward the line of trees beyond the prison yard, disappearing into the dark forest. Back inside, guards flooded the yard. Someone shouted, "Death row's empty, he's gone." The words sent a chill through every officer in Ellis Unit. Within minutes, every road around Huntsville was blocked off. Sirens wailed through the countryside. Helicopters were ordered into the air. By sunrise, James Earl Ray was the most wanted man in Texas. Every law enforcement unit was on alert. They called it a code red, a death row escape, something that hadn't happened in years. Reporters gathered outside the prison gates. The warden, pale and furious, told them, "We'll have him back before sundown."
But out there, in the wet woods of East Texas, James was still running. His feet were blistered, his hands torn open, but the rush of freedom pushed him forward. He followed a small creek, hoping it would hide his scent from the dogs. He had memorized the land from an old map. If he could just make it 30 miles east, he'd hit the highway leading to Louisiana. Hours passed. The rain stopped and the heat rose fast. Mosquitoes swarmed. James was starving. He found a half-rotten apple near an old barn and ate it anyway. Somewhere nearby, a helicopter circled low, its spotlight sweeping across the treetops. He pressed himself flat in the mud, barely breathing. Then he heard it. Dogs barking in the distance. The sound sent fear through his chest. They were close, too close. He got up and started moving again, his legs shaking from exhaustion. He stumbled across a dirt road and spotted a pickup truck parked by a fence line. The keys were still in the ignition. For a moment, he thought it was luck, a miracle. He climbed in, started the engine, and began driving east. But as he rounded the first curve, red and blue lights exploded behind him. The troopers had found him. He slammed the truck into reverse, spun it around and crashed through a wooden fence, speeding into an open field. Mud flew from the tires as bullets cracked through the air behind him. He ducked low, gripping the wheel, trying to see through the rain and flashing lights. His heart pounded. His time was running out. Then the engine sputtered. It coughed once, twice, and died. The truck slowed to a crawl in the middle of the field. James hit the steering wheel, desperate, looking for any way out. The lights were closing in now, sirens screaming. He pushed the door open and ran into the dark. vanishing into the tall grass. Behind him, a trooper shouted, "He's on foot! Don't lose him!" And just like that, the chase began. The 24-hour hunt that would decide if James Earl Ray lived as a free man or died as the prisoner who escaped death row.
Rain poured from the night sky as James Earl Ray sprinted through the open field, his legs burning and lungs screaming for air. Flashlights danced behind him, voices shouting orders, dogs barking louder with every second. The field sloped downward into a shallow ditch, and James dove into it, rolling through mud and thorns. He lay still, the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. A spotlight swept just inches over his head, then passed. He pressed his face into the cold ground, barely daring to breathe. The rain helped him. It masked his scent, blurred his footprints, and kept the dogs confused. For the moment, he had vanished into the storm. When the lights faded, James crawled out of the ditch and made his way toward a patch of trees. Every step hurt. His bare feet were torn and bleeding. The wet prison uniform clung to his skin, heavy and cold. He knew the troopers would keep searching until they caught him, so he couldn't stop now. He reached the tree line and began walking through thick woods. Branches slapped against his face. He tripped over roots and stumbled in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter's light flashed through the trees like lightning. He ducked under a fallen log and waited until it passed. By sunrise, James had made it nearly 10 miles from Ellis Unit. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and heavy. He was weak, thirsty, and covered in cuts. When he found a small farmhouse, he hesitated. He knew going near people was dangerous. Every TV and radio in Texas was already broadcasting his face, but his hunger was too strong. He crept to the back porch and found a cooler half full of water bottles. He drank 3 in seconds, then grabbed an apple from a crate by the door. He was about to leave when a screen door creaked open. A man stepped out, squinting into the morning sun. "Who's there?" he shouted. James froze, holding his breath. The man looked around for a moment, then went back inside, muttering something about raccoons. He slipped away fast, disappearing down the dirt road that ran behind the property. By mid-morning, the manhunt had grown massive. More than 200 officers were now involved. The Texas Rangers joined in, along with helicopters from the Department of Public Safety. News stations followed every update. One reporter called it a race against time, a killer on the run with nothing left to lose. James kept low, moving only when he heard no engines nearby. He followed a narrow creek eastward, using the water to hide his trail. Every hour, he looked over his shoulder, half expecting to see lights closing in again. At noon, the heat became unbearable. The Texas sun beat down hard, turning the muddy fields into steaming clay. James found an abandoned shack near the tree line and crawled inside to rest. The place smelled of rust and old wood. He tore off a piece of his shirt to wrap around his bleeding foot. His whole body ached. For the first time in hours, he let himself breathe. He thought about the cell he'd left behind, the small window, the guards, and the long nights counting the days until his execution. He remembered the sound of the switch that powered the electric chair. He had escaped that fate, even if only for a day. But deep down, he knew freedom came with a ticking clock. They would not stop looking, not for him. As evening fell, James left the shack and kept moving east. He stayed close to the road, but far enough to stay unseen. A patrol car passed by once, its siren off, but lights flashing faintly. He dropped flat into a ditch, mud covering his face.
When night came again, the forest turned pitch black. The moon was hidden behind clouds. He used the faint sound of distant traffic to guide him. He was close now, maybe 20 miles from the Louisiana border. If he could cross before sunrise, he thought, he might have a chance to disappear completely. But the troopers were getting closer. They'd found his footprints near the farmhouse, the apple core, and a blood trail leading toward the creek. They were tightening the circle. Around midnight, James reached a small country road. A sign ahead read, East 190, Louisiana, 12 miles. His heart left it. 12 miles. That was all that stood between him and freedom. Then, In the distance, he saw headlights, 2 sets, moving fast in his direction. He ducked into the tall grass and waited, his body trembling. The car slowed down, and spotlights flashed across the road. They'd found him again. He crouched low, heart pounding, ready to run. The lights moved past once, then stopped. A voice over the loudspeaker shouted, "We know you're out there. Come out with your hands up." James froze, every muscle in his body tense. The silence that followed felt endless. Then, with a burst of energy, he bolted into the woods again, crashing through branches as officers yelled behind him. Bullets tore through the trees. Dogs barked furiously. Helicopters circled above. The chase was no longer just a search. It was a storm closing in on one desperate man who refused to stop running. As he stumbled deeper into the forest, the sound of engines roared closer from all sides. He was surrounded, but he didn't know it yet. The woods were silent, except for the crunch of leaves under James's feet and the distant hum of engines closing in. His breath came in sharp bursts. His shirt clung to his body, soaked in sweat and rain. Every direction looked the same. Thick trees, dark shadows, and the faint smell of pine. He had been running for nearly 20 hours now. His body was breaking down, but his will to stay free kept him moving. He crouched behind a large oak tree, straining to listen. Voices echoed through the night, deep, commanding, and close. "He's heading east! Check the ridge!" someone shouted. Flashlights flickered through the trees. Dogs barked again, their howls cutting through the stillness. James looked up. Just ahead, a break in the forest revealed a faint light. A small cabin sat near the edge of the woods, its windows glowing softly. He hesitated. It could be his only chance to hide, or a trap. But he was too exhausted to keep running. He made his choice and crawled toward it. Inside, an old radio played faint country music. The cabin was empty, dusty, and smelled of smoke. He found a coat hanging by the door and wrapped it around himself, shaking from exhaustion. For a few moments, he let his body sink to the floor. His heart still raced, but his eyelids felt heavy. He closed them, just for a second. A dog barked, close, too close. James sat up fast, his pulse spiking again. He peered through a crack in the door and saw the glow of headlights bouncing off the trees. The troopers were right outside. He grabbed a broken chair leg for protection, though he knew it wouldn't matter. Then came the voice over the loudspeaker again. "James Earl Ray, you're surrounded. Come out with your hands up."
His throat went dry. For a long second, he didn't move. Then he heard footsteps crunching outside, slow, deliberate. The sound of a gun being cocked echoed through the silence. He ran out the back door, crashing into the trees once more. A floodlight swept over him. "There! He's running!" someone yelled. The woods lit up with flashlights and shouting. He stumbled through a patch of brush and onto a narrow dirt road. And there they were. 2 police cars blocked the path ahead, red and blue lights flashing. Behind him, more officers emerged from the trees, weapons drawn. "Get down, on the ground," a trooper screamed. James froze. The moment stretched into silence. Then he dropped to his knees, hands shaking above his head. The air was heavy with rain and fear. 2 officers rushed forward, tackling him into the mud. His face hit the ground. Cold metal snapped around his wrists. And just like that, it was over. The 24-hour manhunt, the chase that had consumed Texas, ended right there on a lonely dirt road near the Louisiana border. Reporters would later say he came within 6 miles of escaping the state. 6 miles from freedom. As dawn broke, troopers led James back towards Huntsville in a convoy of flashing lights. The once defiant escapee now sat silent in the back seat, staring at the rain streaking down the window. He didn't speak a word. At Ellis Unit, the warden waited at the gate, arms folded. When the patrol car stopped, he leaned down and said quietly, "You won't be leaving again." In the weeks that followed, investigators discovered how the escape had happened. The hidden hacksaw blades smuggled through laundry, the unguarded tunnel, the failure to count inmates properly during the storm. The incident embarrassed the entire Texas Department of Corrections. Within months, new steel barriers, motion sensors, and 24-hour camera systems were installed across every death row facility in the state. James Earl Ray was placed in permanent isolation. No other inmates, no visitors. For the rest of his life, his cell would remain under constant surveillance. He became a symbol, not of victory, but of how far a man would go to fight his fate. Years later, prison guards would still tell the new recruits the story of the man who escaped death row for one single day. They said he'd run with the strength of 10 men, that the storm itself seemed to hide him, and that when they caught him, he smiled just once, a tired, almost peaceful smile, before they led him away. Some called it madness, others called it courage, but everyone agreed on one thing. James Earl Ray had done the impossible. He had escaped from death row. He had lived free, if only for 24 hours. And in that single day, he forced an entire system to face its greatest fear, that even behind concrete walls, towers, and guns, freedom can never be fully contained. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories based on real events in America. Stories that remind us how thin the line between freedom and captivity can truly be.